Before selling Star Wars to Disney, George Lucas was planning an epic live-action television series that would have taken place between episodes 3 and 4, and dove into the seedy, criminal underworld of Coruscant. Tonally, producer Rick McCallum called it different from the movies, and not a kid's story anymore, envisioning it as Star Wars' answer to The Sopranos, aimed squarely at adults. And while the show would have primarily focused on new characters, Boba Fett was set to play a key role. Saw Gerrera would have made his debut, Darth Vader would have appeared in a two-part storyline, and we also would have learned more about Palpatine's past, with the show actually turning him into a sympathetic character. So let's dive in and find out why it was never made, and also take a look at what could have been Star Wars Underworld. Before we dive in, I'm thrilled to tell you about Opera's reimagined browser, Opera One R2, which is packed with exciting new features, so let's take a look. First, meet Aria, Opera's fully integrated AI feature. Just press Ctrl/ or Command/ on Mac to ask questions directly into Aria's command line and get instant answers. No extra tabs needed. Aria can even create images from prompts and interpret any images you upload, giving you quick info or answers to any image-based questions. Tab Traces lets you retrace your browsing steps effortlessly, marking recently visited tabs with a subtle underscore. The darker it appears, the more recently you were there. It's especially handy for those who keep many tabs open, helping you to quickly find where you left off. Tab Islands automatically groups related tabs, so whether you're shopping, researching, or working, your related tabs are neatly organized into islands, making it easy to switch between topics in one click. You can even collapse unused islands to keep your browser uncluttered. Split screen is also a game changer for multitasking, letting you work on two documents in the same browser simultaneously, perfect for multitasking like streaming and chatting or fact-checking side by side. With these innovative features, Opera One R2 is designed to enhance your browsing experience, boost your productivity, and streamline your workflow, all while providing a truly modern browsing experience. So click the link in the description below to download Opera now. Following Revenge of the Sith, George Lucas became re-energized while working with other writers developing the Clone Wars animated series. Looking to fill in the 19-year gap between episodes 3 and 4, Lucas wanted to focus on peripheral characters from the films as well as introduce new ones, while exploring how the Empire consolidated its grip on the galaxy. And while the movies were big action space adventures with clear-cut heroes and villains, Underworld would have taken a darker, more morally ambiguous approach. Modeled after The Sopranos, the series was set to follow a crime family ruling Lower Coruscant, much like how The Sopranos ruled over Jersey. It would also feature smugglers, gangsters, bounty hunters, and even Wall Street-type power brokers controlling drugs and prostitution on Coruscant, just like how The Wire intricately weaves crime and politics within Baltimore. Drawing heavily from the Blade Runner aesthetic glimpsed in Attack of the Clones, McCallum dubbed it Deadwood in Space, and it was Lucas's response to critics who felt the prequels were too kid-friendly. After the original Star Wars came out, it created an appetite for similar sci-fi epics, resulting in a string of films and even series that desperately tried to cash in on the film's popularity. However, George Lucas felt that 1978's Battlestar Galactica went too far and spoiled the potential market for a Star Wars TV show, leading Lucas to sue the show for plagiarism. When the show was rebooted in 2004 with a darker, more sophisticated and stylized tone, Lucas wasn't upset this time around. Instead, Lucas and McCallum actually sought to emulate it, which is why they hired its creator, Star Trek's Ronald D Moore, to be one of the lead writers on Underworld. One of the ideas Moore brought to the show was called the Imperial Crime Lab, which was basically Star Wars meets CSI. There were also a few Imperial characters that became protagonists, as Moore decided that not everyone in the Empire was evil. Most just continued with the administrative business of running the Republic as it became the Empire. The show would have started in the aftermath of Order 66, when Palpatine ordered the execution of all the Jedi, and while Lucas wanted the show to be told through the eyes of the criminals and lower classes, eventually he was going to slowly bring in legacy characters audiences knew and loved. Darth Vader was planned for a big two-part episode, where he would have put down an uprising happening on Coruscant. Additionally, Lucas wanted to explore how Vader and the Emperor sought out apprentices of their own in that 19-year gap between episodes 3 and 4, saying, "They're like cheating spouses. Sidious and Vader were both looking for a better catch behind the other's back. In true Sith fashion, they looked for candidates they could recruit to overthrow the other. How successful they were in their searches has yet to be told." We also would have learned more about Palpatine's backstory, and it's from these scripts that came his first name, Sheev. God of War game director Cory Barlog would say after briefly working at LucasArts that he got to read the scripts for the show, and they actually turned Palpatine into a sympathetic character who was wronged by this heartless female gangster which destroyed Palpatine as a person. Barlog said he almost cried while reading this and was shocked that he actually cared about the Emperor, the same guy who shot lightning out of his fingers. The series also would have seen Palpatine convert the Jedi Temple into the Imperial Palace, and featured Empire Day, which is celebrated every year on the anniversary of the Empire's creation and was seen in Rebels, but it originated in these scripts. Lucas reportedly loved to mess with Rick McCallum by repeatedly suggesting that Jar Jar Binks should be included in the show, always resulting in McCallum losing his temper and firing off a string of expletives, unaware that Lucas was joking. However, one of Lucas's more controversial decisions was not to use any classic Star Wars themes or the music of John Williams, choosing instead to go with freeform jazz and music inspired by the 50s and 60s TV detective show Peter Gunn, whose theme song had a driving, jazzy beat and a cool noir-inspired feel. Lucas also would have explained how the clone troopers evolved into the stormtroopers and became volunteers made up of normal people, not clones. Basically, once it became clear how independent the clones could become under the guidance of the Jedi, Palpatine had second thoughts about the clones' utility and loyalty after the war, and so stopped their production. With the clones now aging twice as fast as everyone else, some would go on to become trainers for stormtroopers, while the rest would have been discarded after serving their purpose, leaving them to come to terms with their actions. The cantina on Coruscant, called 79s, would have been a place for former clone troopers to go to forget the horrible actions they committed under Order 66. As for the battle droids, a bunch of them who weren't deactivated at the end of the war would have joined together to work as muscle for Coruscant's many crime families. Known as the Droid Gotra, they would have supported droid rights and held a grudge against the Empire for having been abandoned after their service during the Clone Wars. Boba Fett would have been the only legacy character in the series from the start, and he would have been an instrumental part of it. Rick McCallum even wanted Daniel Logan to return to play the part, as the young actor began working out with Ray Park every day so he could get in shape and learn to do some flips like Darth Maul did. Lucas also planned a Star Wars game called Star Wars 1313 that would have weaved stories and characters from the show into the game, and been similar to Naughty Dog's Uncharted series. 1313 refers to a corrupt level on Coruscant controlled by crime families, and Boba Fett would have been the main protagonist of the game. Allegedly, the game would have answered questions like, who is Boba Fett? Why was Han working for Jabba? And who are the Bothan spies? Fett's armor also would have evolved throughout the story, which would have started on Tatooine with Fett working for Jabba. Central to the story would have been the masked alien gangsters known as the Pike Syndicate, who are the preeminent spice dealers in the galaxy, and funnel it into the stores of some of the most influential crime families operating in the lower levels of Coruscant, using tauntauns to smuggle it covertly. Additionally, considering the show would have featured Kessel, where the spice is mined, and the famous Kessel Run, used by smugglers to transport spice from Kessel at the behest of the Pike Syndicate, the show also would have eventually explored Han Solo's origins, as we'd see how Lando lost the Falcon to him, and also how he and Chewie first met. Much of the concept art created for the game offers the clearest glimpse of what the TV series might have looked like, as both were developed in concert with each other and designed to tie into one another. Saw Gerrera, who would eventually find his way into the Clone Wars as well as Rogue One, was another character that was developed for the series. Lucas's idea for the character was inspired by the Taliban, as Lucas wanted Saw to be militarized by the Republic to fight a proxy war against their worst enemy, only for him to become their worst enemy a generation later. Lucas also wanted Saw to become a key architect of the rebellion, who was not talked about much in the future and is disowned to a degree after something bad went down. 50 scripts would eventually be written covering 2 seasons, with 25 episodes to a season, and they were all written as if money was no object, as Lucas would encourage his writers to think big, always resulting in producer Rick McCallum groaning and putting his head in his hands at the thought of the spiraling budget. Regardless, not only would the show have been populated with numerous digital characters, but it would have taken place in numerous locations. For a 2-hour movie with an enormous budget, that's fine, but for a TV series with smaller budgets and faster turnarounds, Lucas and McCallum realized that they needed a massive studio, as well as real-time virtual set technology to make it feasible, as building all the required sets practically or traveling to exotic locations would be far too costly. As a result, Lucas planned to build a new state-of-the-art facility called Grady Ranch, not far from Skywalker Ranch, to film the series. Lucas then hired Stargate Studios to produce proof-of-concept footage, capturing stormtroopers alongside Coruscant's underworld of merchants, peddlers, and criminals on a small green screen set, with a virtual environment composited around them in real time. Lucas then took this test footage, intended only as a proof of concept and not a final representation of the show, to various networks in search of a co-financier. Although the footage reportedly received positive reactions, each network ultimately passed on the project, citing its high costs and an unfavorable deal structure offered by Lucas. For instance, HBO, which produces Game of Thrones, offsets the show's high production costs by holding significant control over the franchise, which they can then exploit for more revenue. Lucas, however, wanted to retain full ownership of his show and all associated merchandise, making the deal less attractive and financially impractical for networks. The nail in the coffin, however, was Lucas's inability to secure the necessary approvals to begin construction of Grady Ranch, which was strongly opposed by the local residents of Lucas Valley. Additionally, Lucas and McCullum recognized that the technology wasn't advanced enough to achieve their vision within the constraints of a TV budget. With all the digital characters and sets, production would have cost over $5 million per episode, their absolute maximum, as they were committed to giving the show a cinematic quality on a television budget. As a result, they decided to wait a few years, hoping for technological breakthroughs that could make the project feasible. Lucas had long envisioned transforming Lucasfilm into a TV production powerhouse in order to continue telling Star Wars stories beyond the Skywalker saga. However, this would never happen, as Lucas, devastated that his plans for Grady Ranch fell through, ultimately decided to sell Lucasfilm to Disney. Of course, the Underworld scripts were part of the sale, and they've been mined heavily ever since. Even Lucas's visual effects supervisor, John Knoll, came up with the idea for what would become Rogue One as an episode for Underworld. However, to Lucas and McCullum's credit, they were on the right track, just a few years too early. When Lucas showed up on the Mandalorian set, he looked around at the innovative stagecraft technology, referred to as the Volume, which is used to create immersive virtual environments in real time and in camera, and said, hey, this is what I wanted to do. So while Underworld was never made, its legacy sure lives on. Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Bullets and Blockbusters for more great content.